Well, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Lunch Update, our program that helps you stay curious, connected, informed, live, and in real time. This conversation, like all of our update programs, is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie. We'd also like to thank our Accelerate sponsors, Baker Tilly and Easy Office Products. Today's program will feature a conversation around the results of a recent community-wide business and economic survey undertaken by a number of local partner organizations and led by the Chamber as part of what we're calling N2, the Next Normal Work Group. So N2 stands for the Next Normal. Before we get into this, I think, illustrative conversation of where we are and where we're headed economically and from our business standpoint, I do want to give you a few brief Chamber updates. First, we'd like to extend an invite to a few of these events coming up. And so anything I highlight today can be found on our website, or you can certainly email our team. We'll help you get connected to these events. You can register today at madisonbiz.com. Our final next big thing of the year is coming to the WISO Center for Music tomorrow. So this is tomorrow, November 14th. WISO, if you don't know, is the home to the world-renowned Wisconsin Youth Symphony Orchestras. It's a brand new multi-use facility. It's located on East Washington Avenue. If you've gone down East Wash lately, you've certainly driven by. It's a beautiful building on the outside, and we invite you to come in and see it on the inside. It's about a mile east of the Capitol Square, and you can easily access it via the city's new bus rapid transit system. We will have drinks and appetizers and great networking and live music, as you might expect, as we get a tour and are able to check out the state-of-the-art community gathering performance space that is WISO. Another upcoming event that we want to highlight for you is a partnership that we have launched with Deborah Biddle of the People Company. We are offering 2 free workshops that are focused on business owners that give insights about the resources and strategies for implementing and enhancing belonging inside of your workplace. So as you think about DEI B, so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, what does that look like today, and how is it changing for the future? We'd love to have you attend. We're also providing lunch. And although all Chamber members are welcome, these workshops are primarily intended for small, medium-sized organizations. What we hope to do is find organizations that do not have significant internal resources dedicated to diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. And so we would hope to be able to impart best practices and what the future is going to look like. And so first meeting is Tuesday, November 19th. You can sign up today at madisonbiz.com. And then the second workshop, which is the hope is if you can attend the first, you can also attend the second, but is not required, would be January 22nd. So again, next Tuesday and then January 21st. I'm sorry, not 22nd. Also coming up is our advocacy in the AM on December 4th. We will welcome a panelist representing developers, planning experts, realtors, local economic development officials to discuss the challenges we face and the collective goal of increasing access to a diverse supply of workforce housing in Greater Madison. When we last convened a panel of regional mayors in November 23, they all agreed that the top priority, the defining problem of our region was housing. And with our region now projected to reach 1 million people by 2050, housing is certainly a challenge that we have to get ahead of now. And so we invite you to join us. Again, that will be December 4th, and you can register today. About an hour ago, Melissa Agard was sworn in as the new Dane County executive. It's a weird timing because she was elected to fill former county executive Joe Parisi's unexpired term. Which means that County Exec Agard will be up for re-election in the spring. The Chamber Board is certainly proud to have endorsed her and put resources into that campaign, and we look forward to working with her on the opportunities and challenges ahead in our region. And then last month at the Chamber annual dinner, we announced several new projects related to talent attraction that we want to highlight and bring to your attention. You can go to bemadison.com, so bemadison.com. It's a portal for everything you need when it comes to talent recruitment. It's place-based positioning, so giving you content that you can use to help sell place. It's been built on decades of state-of-the-science brand research that we've been doing, and all designed to help you and your organization and the region amplify an authentic case for making a life in Greater Madison. We also launched MakeMadison.com, which is a recruitment website specifically for multicultural talent. It's designed by written by and features the content from a multicultural perspective, where we have authentic voices who are telling the stories of why Madison is a place to make a career, make a life, and make a difference. And then N2, which we will talk about today, is a new public-private work group that is focused on examining future trends in work and workplaces. The official kickoff was the business survey that we'll discuss today. And then as part of this project, there are a handful of other things that we'll be rolling out in the coming weeks. And so I encourage you to look at our newsletter on Thursdays and look at our different communication tools, social media, LinkedIn, as we roll out the rest of it. So on today's program, we're going to, one, give you top line results from this community survey, and then bring in some of our partners in this project to discuss their take on it. And so I'd like to welcome in the Chamber's Vice President, Kevin Little, to provide a little bit more background on the Next Normal Work Group, which was, as I said, this regional employer survey, and it helped set the table for this conversation. So thanks for joining us, Kevin.
Hey, Zach. My pleasure to walk through some of this data right now. As you mentioned, this group that we have convened is a mixture of many partner organizations. Several of them are participating in this conversation. You'll hear from them later, but on your screen right now is a listing of all of the groups that participated and continue to participate in this work, both on the governmental side, planning side, and other partner organizations representing business. What we set out to do was add on current and projected economic outlook, as well as ask some prime questions for us to get a better sense of what's the future of work and workspaces look like. And through the collective reach of all of the organizations that were listed on the previous screen, it certainly was reflected in the results. We had a broad sample base. We heard from 261 unique businesses. It was local. So more than 80% of the responses that we received identified Dane County as their headquarters, and also represented small business as well, with a strong majority of our responses coming from businesses with fewer than 50 employees. It was a cross-section of industries that we heard from. The top among them, construction and trades, food and beverage, and business and professional. But no one industry was oversampled to an extent that would have a significant impact on the data that was received. So here's what we heard from employers. So first off, just talking about this year, the end of the year, how the last 12 months has gone, and some pretty optimistic data to share. 85% of responses did not have any significant workforce change to the negative. So either they didn't change, they expanded, or they wanted to expand, but had some challenges with talent shortages, which we'll get into later in the discussion, I'm sure. On the revenue front, so year to date, and this survey took place at the end of September into early October, but a good look at where we were year to date. You can see 71% of businesses had either no change to their revenue projections or had actually increased. Also, a high rating for the quality of local talent. So importantly, different from the availability that we'll talk about with talent shortages and that gap that we know that exists, but of the talent that is here, very favorable ratings for the quality of talent that is available, as well as a very positive outlook on the business climate. And again, this stretches beyond one municipality. We have responses from all over the region, but a very positive outlook on the climate. Looking ahead to next year, I think the optimism only grows. So you can see 94% of respondents expect either no change to their workforce or expanding or wanting to expand, while again acknowledging some of the talent shortages that do exist. And 82% expect increased revenue. So a climb from where we are this year, and that's reflected across all industries, but also notably among a lot of B2C businesses, arts and entertainment, retail, feeling very, very favorable about the coming year. But not without challenges. And so when we asked about some of the biggest barriers to business, these were the top 5 that emerged among the 261 responses that we received, consistent with the surveys that we've been doing now for several years, going back to the pandemic. Access to talent remains the #1 barrier across all industries. We know that's true, even though we are growing in population, have a lot of very encouraging indicators in terms of our in-migration, as well as job growth. with a 2.1% unemployment rate, which ranks us among the lowest in the country, there still is that gap with supply not quite meeting or matching the demand. And then you can see in the 2 through 4 there, operating cost concerns. So we see inflation, interest rates, healthcare costs, all having an impact on business right now. And then a new one that emerged from past surveys into our top 5 is the availability and accessibility of workforce housing. When asked about the toughest positions to hire in industries, customer service, skilled trades, sales and marketing, management, hospitality, all ranked among the highest from the respondents that we polled. Technology, AI, was actually pretty low among the respondents, which is notable for a point that we'll get to later in the conversation. Overall retention, generally favorable. So 85% over the last 12 months, 85% of respondents said that they had either no change or actually an improvement in the retention of their workforce. Now, among those that had challenges, the types of issues that were identified in employee retention challenges were work-life balance, the increased competition and compensation to keep talent, and then also generational differences in workplace expectations. On the retention front, we see employers providing many new types of benefits. So we see flexible schedules, professional development, and paid mental health all rising to the top of type of new beyond the traditional benefits that many employers provide for their employees. Others that we're starting to see emerging trend lines in, and it will be interesting to track this data in the years to come, are types of benefits like childcare reimbursement and pet insurance as well, with more employers providing those types of emerging benefits. So we talk a lot about our in-migration of young talent, but specifically we wanted to ask questions about young professionals in Gen Z's demographic. And generally people have had some favorable success at being able to recruit talent, and they're finding it locally. So 81% of those that have been recruiting in this demographic say they can find talent here in the local talent pool. And we also heard that across all industries, the reputation of the region as a great place to live and do business is really important to talent acquisition efforts. We asked about remote work. So this is something that we've been benchmarking since the pandemic when we had to go to more remote work spaces. So currently, among those that we heard from, 57% of respondents are currently fully in person. So they have 0 remote workers. The number in the top left corner of your screen is the last survey where we asked these questions, which was in fall 2021. So there was 66% in that time. Compared to 4% of our respondents are completely remote workspaces, so no office use employees. This compares to 8% when we pulled this in fall of 2021. So not significant changes. You can see these trends we expect it to continue in 2025 based on what we're hearing from people. Similar trajectories, a slight dip in the fully remote workforce that respondents are expecting. I think one notable change, which is to be expected, is that we see more employers providing some type of hybrid workspace where employees are expected to be in the office part of the time and remote optional in other parts of the time. But when asked to explain what that means, it looks very different for businesses. So you can see 44% of the respondents that have some type of remote workforce is where the employer requires specific days for their employees to be in the office every single week. A similar percentage has employee flexibility to decide which days of the week that they would like to comply with being in the office. And then a small percentage there that's remaining where the employer picks a specific day, not necessarily every week requirement, but different days in the year to be in the office. When asked about productivity and how employers feel remote work impacts productivity, it's pretty mixed. So nearly half of the respondents, again, who have some remote workers, said that there's no measurable difference with productivity and the impact of remote work. 18% of the respondents said it has improved their overall productivity, while 30% has noticed it has hindered productivity to some extent. We also asked a lot about office plans and how remote work impacted office plans. And of the respondents that implemented some form of remote work, Only 6% decreased the size of their office space as a reflection of that remote work. But looking ahead to the next year, 56% of our respondents plan to maintain the same amount of office space, invest in new improvements, or move to new space. 14% expect to increase their office space over the next 1 to 3 years, and 8% expect to decrease. So not a significant amount of downsizing that we're seeing among the responses, which is different from perhaps some larger metropolitan areas that we're tracking in terms of the decline of office inventory. The proximity economy definitely matters when employers are deciding office locations. These are the desired amenities that rise to the top when employers are looking at where they want their office to be located. You see transportation, both in access to public transportation, but also parking, as well as restaurants, neighborhoods, arts and entertainment are all things that are desirable qualities when employers are looking for office spaces. Interestingly, we asked some questions about AI and how businesses may be using AI. And nearly half of all of our respondents said that they are not using AI in any capacity. And we're not seeing that change at all in the next year with that same percentage, just a slight dip, 46% of our respondents saying that they don't anticipate increasing or changing their strategies around remote work. So that's an interesting thing to note again across all industries. And knowing that connectivity is so important as the great work of the Dade County Regional Airport and trying to increase the amount of nonstop destinations to other areas, we asked our respondents which destinations that we don't currently have nonstop service to would be most impactful to your business. And we see a lot of familiar places. Boston continues to rise to the top, that research connectivity being very important. I see LAX and SFO, both places that we had destinations pre-pandemic, continue to be valuable from an economic standpoint. And Vegas and BNA is Nashville. Both rose pretty high when polled by our respondents on places that they would like to see more increased connectivity with. So that's a quick look at the top line, Zach, and I will turn things over to you and the panel to discuss.
Real quick, Kevin, before I bring in our other panelists, just where does this go from here? I mean, where do you did a great job leading this effort, but where does it go from here?
You know, what I'm excited to do is we're really going to start to dig into a lot of the crosstabs so that we can pull this apart even more to see if we can assess how this impacts different business sizes, geographies, where jobs are going. I'm really hopeful that it can lead to some helpful recommendations for our partners, particularly in government, as they think about zoning and land use decisions and how we grow. You know, you talked about it at the annual dinner about the pace of our growth. And I think it's a lot of people are shocked when they hear those numbers. Now, this very group predicted, you know, year over year, we're continuing to outpace the expectations for what we think our population is going to grow by. And when you think about perhaps our metropolitan area being more than 1 million people in the next 25 years, we've really got to stay ahead of these land use transportation decisions and be making good decisions in terms of where employers are planning to be, because we know that those decisions have an impact on community planning as well. So I hope to dig deeper into this so that we can have more informed policy recommendations, and all of those organizations that are around that table are going to be very helpful components to that as well moving forward.
And annualized, right? The hope is to continue to do this every year using this as a baseline.
Absolutely. I think the ability for us to benchmark, because this is just a moment in time with some of this data, if we can benchmark this to really assess trends, it will help us not only in the present, but be able to peek around the corner with a little bit more certainty.
Great. Thanks, Kevin, for the presentation and for the leadership on this. And speaking of leaders, it's my pleasure to start to bring in some of our partners in this effort. First, I'd like to welcome Camille Carter, who has been on our program before, but Camille is the president and CEO of the Madison Black Chamber of Commerce. Camille is an entrepreneur, having started Financial Services Group of Wisconsin, LLC, in 2017. And she's also worked at key positions at North American Bank Card and Mass Mutual Financial Group. Also joining us today is Seth Lentz. Seth served as the CEO, or continues to serve, since 2019. He previously had 14 years of experience in the deputy role at the Workforce Development Board, and before that, he was the director of operations over on the southwest side of the state for their Workforce Development Board. Jason Valerius was named the executive director of CARPC, which stands for the Capital Area Regional Plan Commission, in early 2024. He previously served as a planner and senior team lead at MSA Professional Services, as well as the board president for the Wisconsin chapter of the American Planning Association. And also joining us today, Mark Binkowski, who is a shareholder at Urban Land Interest, where he started 10 years ago as a development associate. He previously worked as a financial analyst with Jones Lang LaSalle's corporate solutions business down in Chicago. So thank all of you for joining us today. We're certainly excited to have you with us, but also very excited about the partnership. I guess I'll start with, you heard the high level data that Kevin just reviewed. And so I'm curious about things that stood out to you as partners. You know, we started this not really knowing what we would find. I think we all had some hunches, but we all came at this from different constituencies, different customer bases, different interests. Which is, I think, one of the strengths of this project is that we all put together our contact lists and our networks to make sure that we were getting some of the best data available. But does the data that you saw overall, and certainly what we just saw from Kevin, does that match what you're hearing from your networks, your customers, your constituencies? Are there any surprises? And Seth, I'll start with you on the workforce side.
Yeah, thanks. So, for me, this was a validation, right? We're hearing many of this similar content coming from our different engagements with communities, businesses, and also from workers. So a lot of it validated some of the anecdotal information that we've gotten. I think one of the takeaways for me was this recurring theme of we got a population problem. We got a shortage challenge here. But I think the upside to that was that you saw the overall quality of workforce was appreciated. So I think that that's an opportunity for us. Okay, what's working well? How do we continue to amplify that? And then where are some opportunities? I think in the shortage space, it's going to also, to your earlier comment about DEIB, I think that it's going to resonate there as well. We're going to have to change kind of who we've been looking at and how we've been approaching them, how we've been engaging different populations, our pipeline strategies, and then also our talent development strategies.
Yeah, thanks. Jason, on the planning side, I mean, I was a CARPC commissioner for more than a decade. I think CARPC is one of the most underappreciated entities in the region about helping us think through who we are, who we aspire to be, who we can be. But as you look into that planning crystal ball, does this start to align for you and what the future might look like based on how you're planning and helping people plan for the future?
I think so. There weren't many surprises here. Our lens on this conversation is physical development. What are we building? What do we need to build? How do we connect people by proximity and by transportation so that they can do all the things that they want to do in our region? And we saw in these results kind of a reinforcement of our expectations about growth. We know we're growing, and we saw people affirming that in various ways in these results. I think the only one of the few surprises, we have a lot of uncertainty around what's happening with the need for office space and office development in the region, and wouldn't have been surprised to see people saying that they're looking to maybe consolidate office space a little bit because of the way that people are working remotely or hybrid schedules. And I don't think we really saw that. I think that there's companies either holding steady or looking to grow their office space needs related to that overall employment and population growth.
Right. Thanks, Jason. Mark, I mean, I think ULI certainly has to have the largest private sector portfolio of downtown space. It's not the largest, one of the largest. Certainly made some of the biggest investments in keeping the central city the heart of the economic engine. We've talked about this. This is a survey. We've talked about it theoretically. We've talked about forecasting the future. You live and breathe it every day. You talk to your tenants. You're looking at new tenants. How does this match up to what you're hearing from existing tenants? But maybe more importantly, what the future tenant looks like.
Yeah, I think I would kind of echo what Seth said with validation. I mean, we've got nearly 200 commercial tenants across our portfolio, and that ranges from everything from professional services, construction, government, and nobody that I talk to is feeling particularly bearish, right? Regardless of the company, the size, everybody is, busy, has a lot of work, feels good about what's to come. So I think that theme of optimism that, you and Kevin touched on is certainly ringing true. And what's interesting is, what we saw in the survey data really aligns with what we're seeing in downtown Madison. The interesting piece is that it kind of contradicts what you read in the national news, right? Everything's about the death of office space and everybody's going hybrid and is giving back space. And, I think it's 8%, only 8% of respondents had plans to decrease their office space in the next 3 years. And that is very much, what we're seeing. We're not seeing wholesale across the board companies giving back space or going fully remote. And so that, is playing out in real time. And I think we saw that kind of align with the results of the survey. And so it's that contradiction between what we're actually seeing happening, but what everybody reads about and kind of assumes is happening based on the national trends that, I think is really interesting, and something as the chamber and other organizations, figuring out that messaging piece is an important takeaway from this.
Great, thanks. Camille, one of the things, as Mark just referenced, and certainly in Kevin's deck, was this overwhelming sense of optimism. Does that align with what you're hearing within your constituencies at the Madison Black Chamber?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It is, and we've been hearing an overwhelming sense of optimism feedback from our businesses since the pandemic. They've oftentimes, Black-owned businesses are very resilient. They, didn't anticipate COVID and some of the after effects of that, but they have pivoted. They have become lean. They have gone through a great deal of frustration, challenges within the workforce as well, really trying to make sure that they are delivering on their brand to their customers, and they are still keeping those doors open, and now really seeking to leverage technology. We're finding that they are being creative and sharing office spaces and finding solutions for them to help them to be successful in the long term. So I would agree with that optimism.
You certainly felt it at the Black Restaurant Week Jamboree. I mean, just the energy. I suspect at the annual bazaar that you guys are now inviting people to come join and expo and display. And so you can certainly feel it when within your membership. And so I'm glad to hear the feeling is actually real, not just in the data, but what you see on a daily basis. I like one of the things that we certainly noted in there was the talent quandary. Seth hit on it. This talent imperative we put ourselves in. Rising costs. We saw a number of those interest rates, inflation, healthcare costs, not easily controlled on the local level, if at all. But then we saw housing, which had not been in the answer set from previous surveys that we've done. But in housing for their workforce is now one of the key barriers to business growth, or a concern that it will become a barrier. How does that reconcile with what you're hearing from on the talent side and on the business side? Does that jive with, I want to hire more people, but where are they going to live? Are you hearing those similar kinds of concerns within your networks? And Jason, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think what we've been seeing over the past 5+ years, really 10 years, is communities coming around to the realization that they need to be actively involved in the housing market, and often the local business community taking a prominent role in that discussion. And so as it happens, I'm taking this meeting from the city of Sun Prairie, and the city of Sun Prairie is one that when they started to talk about, we need to do a study, we need to figure out what our approach is, and ultimately, proceeding from there to funding and a standing committee and all that, it started with the local business community. And the connection there between housing availability and jobs and the needs of employers is becoming more and more apparent.
Yeah. So how about you? I mean, you have a direct line of connection both to the employer, but also to the employee. I mean, are you hearing that on both sides of the coin? Is that a double-edged equation?
Yeah, absolutely. To the point, it's about accessibility, but also affordability. So those have been kind of the two top issues that we've been hearing for the different communities that we work with. I would, just to throw in there as well, which didn't necessarily come to the surface in the survey, but I think in a similar relation to that in regards to access and affordability is childcare. That's been another one that we're hearing both from the worker and the business side that I think is gonna, to Jason's point, is gonna take a collective approach. Which, Zach, I know we've had some conversations about that effort and need as well, but I see that as also another key barrier that as a community we're going to have to rally around and try to figure out how to address.
Yeah. Camille, how about you? I mean, we certainly know that Black-owned businesses have a more diverse workforce. I mean, it's one of the benefits and blessings of an effort to grow diverse businesses, multicultural businesses. It will lead to a better, more enabled, more present multicultural workforce. Are you hearing that at the business level about the concern from the business owner, but also are you in your talent connections? Are you hearing that as well? Housing at the town?
Are we talking insofar as housing? I think housing has always been a struggle for the African American community. And I do hear it not just in my, from my business owners, but also from my peers as well that make very really positive and strong income. And so, I would also say healthcare, when you're talking young professionals, they do have families and children. And so balancing two very high expenditures, either within a single parent household or even two parent households, it's a challenge here. And I think Madison certainly needs to find ways to find more opportunities to help release some of those constraints.
Yeah. Mark, I'm gonna get to you in a second. I do think that's one of the opportunities in this is to understand about how do we recruit and retain talent, but also understanding the barriers for talent themselves and trying to address those root causes as well, I think is what the next decade will look like. Mark, your company has a portfolio both in we talked about in the office and commercial space, but you also have a residential portfolio. What are you seeing on we know we've underbuilt over the last decade across the whole entire county. We know we still have a need to build. There's a dynamic that we've talked about that about a third of the workforce is renting down. They could afford higher rent, and if we could move them up, we would create more of that missing middle inventory. What are you seeing on your rental side and that piece of your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, the demand for apartments remains really robust in Madison and especially downtown. I mean, there's no question, it's no big surprise to anybody that housing affordability is a really big issue for Madison and the greater Madison area. And I think in large part we're a victim of our own success there with the growth and the people coming. And when you kind of taking it back to hybrid work in the office, I think one of the reasons, and this is just my own kind of anecdotal evidence, is Madison is still a relatively small city. And so for people to drive from their house or their apartment to their office, there's relatively short commute times for a large number of people. And so, if you're looking at 20 minutes in the car versus an hour on a bus in Chicago or on the L, that's very different and going to impact how you make a decision about whether or not you're going to go into the office. But if we don't address the affordability issue and we don't keep providing people places to live that are affordable, in downtown or near downtown, the further we drive people out of downtown, the further we just expand more broadly, that's going to exacerbate that issue of, well, now people might say, oh, maybe I will work, 2 or 3 days from home as opposed to coming into the office. So I think there's a really direct link between those two. And obviously solving the housing affordability is not a simple issue, but certainly one that we're hearing a lot of.
Well, so let's jump right into that then on the whole question about remote work. It certainly, I would say, I don't think we saw any seismic shifts, right? I mean, from our previous, both asking people pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, I think hybrid's at least the norm for now, and what that means is clearly up in the air, that people are still testing what works. Businesses are certainly still testing how to gain more control over what hybrid means. And we know it will continue to evolve and vary, and that's part of this effort, is to better understand that. But I guess I'm curious as to, what you're seeing in your individual constituencies. And Mark, I'll end with you. I'll come back to you. But Seth, as you're seeing businesses that are looking for talent, are you seeing increased demand from talent that they want hybrid or maybe fully remote? And then what's businesses' reaction to that when it comes to thinking through remote or at least hybrid work?
Yeah, so some of our conversations in that space have been real interesting because it varies kind of by industry. Construction has significantly less interest in remote work. Manufacturing has this interesting mix between their office and their production. So trying to balance that has also been some, kind of a creative space for some of our businesses. But the push for some hybrid capacity has definitely become almost the norm now, that's kind of the expectation that there's going to be some level of it. I think it showed up in the survey when you look at some of the work-life balance as the priorities to try to change either some practices to increase retention. And I think also part of that is the generational. Anecdotally, that's what we've also been hearing. The younger generation kind of like some of the in-person because they're building and establishing the network. The Xers and the boomers, they've got family and ties at both ends. So having the flexibility in their schedule is more conducive to them. And they're willing to compromise compensation versus schedule flexibility. So that work-life balance definitely has been resonating. The other thing that I think will be something for us to watch is, government is really big in our local economy. And the government employment has shifted on what their expectations are right now. So I think people talk, and so that's going to be interesting to see what government ends up doing for their expectations for work, how that starts to resonate and set a different expectation through the community.
Yeah. Jason, I thought there was an interesting dynamic that was at play in the survey data, that employers overwhelmingly were looking for amenities, right? They wanted reasons to be in the office, but then aren't necessarily focused on moving people back into the office 100% of the time. So if you don't, a restaurant needs business on, Tuesday at lunch, just like it needs business Friday for dinner. How do you plan for something like that? How do you plan for what an employment center looks like when we aren't sure about proximity, the proximity economy, those things that are ancillary to workforce or to employment centers? Do you plan based on the traditional model where, big employment center means restaurant, retail, grocery store development, or do you plan more for rooftops and thinking, well, maybe restaurants need to be closer to where people live because that's where they're going to be spending potentially 50, 40, 30% of their time? How do you plan for something like that?
Yeah, that's a complex question and a complex answer. There's a lot going on there. I think in our process here of crafting the survey with you and trying to understand the results, even if we had devoted 5 or 6 more questions to this issue of how exactly are you managing your hybrid work schedule in your, with your staff, it would have been hard to know because it's kind of ever changing, and we think it'll continue to change. In some ways, I think the availability of those amenities is as important now as ever, because when we give people the choice, hey, you could work from home, sometimes you can come into the office, sometimes there need to be reasons for people to want to come into the office. And I think employers recognize the value of having people there face to face at least part of the time. But then also when they're there less, yeah, you're right, there's lesser in aggregate demand in those locations. And so the balance between the amount of office space versus the restaurant and coffee shops and amenities they can support is probably shifting to needing more office space to support the same number. And I agree with where you're headed with that. You supplement that by mixing in the residential nearby too. So intermixing those uses more is the direction I see us going.
Yeah, thanks. Camille, for you have a sector diverse membership, right? So your membership spreads across from technology to financial services, but some of the most growing and high profile and most celebrated businesses are consumer facing, and do require foot traffic, and they require disposable income. What are you hearing from your members on as they're thinking about expanding their storefronts, finding new storefronts? How are they looking at the return to work as an opportunity or a challenge for the future?
Most of our businesses are, again, customer facing and service oriented. And it is a little more challenging for them because they really do need to have a predictable face to their business, a predictable result to their business. And it's really difficult for them, to plan that they are going to reach their optimal expectations, not really being able to balance, particularly with younger workforce. They are demanding that they have flexibility. They are demanding that they have more vacation and balance. And it does present challenges for small businesses of anywhere between 2 to 5 in particular. They're struggling with that concept.
Yeah. Thanks, Camille. Mark, I mean, you've got a portfolio that has both, right? So how do you balance that in your own portfolio as you're looking at expanding space, building new buildings? Is your view of the future mix of that evolving?
I think Jason was on the right track when he was saying that mix of uses, right? I mean, I think one of the reasons downtown has done really well is because we have those different uses. You have the office during the daytime, you have, the apartments and people living there at night. And so that helps support the shops, the bars and the restaurants. And, I think understanding how we can all sort of collectively work together to support those, as you said, Zach, the kind of the proximity economy, right? Those other businesses that are really fundamental to the fabric of our neighborhoods, downtowns, different areas. How can we make sure that we're helping support them? Because they are so important to what is enticing employees to want to come back to the office. I mean, one of the things that, I've heard is companies are saying, okay, well, we're going to cater more lunches because we want to, give employees a reason to come into the office. So we'll cater lunch for everyone. Well, it's easy to call up a Pandora, Chipotle or, Panera, Chipotle or whoever it is and cater that way. But can we get out the messaging of like, well, let's support the local restaurants and how can we help their lunch business? Because we know that's an area where they're hurting. So I think paying attention to that whole ecosystem, the residential housing, the ancillary support, service businesses and the office environment is really important because when you have all three of those, that creates that dynamic, vibrant place where people want to be. But if you just have, just one of those kind of in an isolated area, I think it's going to be much harder to sustain that going forward.
All right, final question. I got 2 minutes. So I want to get through all 4 of you in 2 minutes. As you look ahead to 2025, certainly the survey says employers are feeling optimistic. What predictions do you have for your organization's business, your constituencies, network, region? What's 2025 look like for you optimistically? Camille, I'll start with you.
I think Black-owned businesses and small businesses in general continue to be optimistic. They are finding innovative ways to leverage technology. They are resilient. They have gone and weathered the storm and are still standing. So I don't foresee that changing.
Great. Thanks. Seth, how about you?
I'm looking forward to, I think businesses are getting more involved in incumbent worker training strategies and career pathway mapping to show upward mobility. So I'm excited to continue to see that grow.
Great. Mark, what do you see on the horizon for 2025?
I think we're going to see more growth. I think we're going to see more new projects, new housing being built that leveled off a little bit in the latter half of this year, just with interest rates and construction costs. And, I'm optimistic. I think that there's still quite a bit of demand. And so I think we're going to see more growth next year.
Jason, you have the planning crystal ball. So you have maybe the most insight of what might be. So tell us what's in that crystal ball.
People are seeing growth, short term, long term. These results reinforce that. I think a willingness or recognition of the need to accommodate and plan for and build for that growth is the conversations I expect to be having this year.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, each of you, for joining us. Camille, Seth, Jason, Mark, Kevin, for his presentation and for the partnership. I want to thank all of you for joining us over your lunch hour. And certainly thanks to Perkins Coie for remaining the presenting sponsor. We'll see you all next time right here on Lunch Update.